Yeah, I thought we could maybe start by kind of talking about kind of just generally how you got interested in psychology and yeah, doing kind of basically how you got to doing what you're doing today. And I was curious, you mentioned on your Patreon, you mentioned kind of how your father and your uncle both worked as psychologists and
Yes.
inspired you there. So I'm just curious, like, yeah, what did that exactly mean, and maybe what was the story with the iron rod?
Yeah. So I think I got interested in psychology earlier on in life. Fortunate to my dad is a psychologist, and my uncle is a psychologist. So virtually, I kind of learn from them.
Sorry, psychologist means like clinical or research?
Yeah.
Or...
Okay. Yeah. My dad is an industrial and forensic psychologist, and my uncle is a clinical psychologist. So the story of my uncle. So there was this day we just crossing the road, and so there's this mentally disordered man across the road, and confidently my uncle just approached him and said, "Yeah, can I see the rod?" Then he just handed over the rod to him. And I was just behind him, so I was looking like, because this man is scary and nobody even wants to go close to him with the rod, and he approached him like, "Can I see the rod?" And he handed over the rod to him, and immediately the man handed over the rod. It just seems like realized that, oh, did I just hand over my weapon to somebody? And he was, and he was about to attack him in a way, and my uncle was like, "I don't want to see you with this rod again." So I kind of paused and like, yeah, is this what psychology do? Okay, yeah, that's cool. I think I really want to learn more about these. Then my dad has a bunch of texts in the house. Then I just keep open some of these texts and read so many aspects of psychology. So from the start, I've thought in my mind like, yeah, if I have the opportunity to have to do psychology, I'm definitely going to take it. Even at a point when I have to decide between doing psychology and economics, and my dad was like, "Yeah, there's an offer for economics." I said, "No, I will do psychology." And so this is a big motivation for me. Then I focus on this, keep reading, keep trying to be better. And here I am in France after like a long journey, to be a psychologist. Yeah.
Is one thing I was curious about in general, and this, I mean, I guess in general we're going to talk quite a bit about how psychology is, or psychological research is in, I mean, Africa.
Yeah.
Which it always feels funny to be just saying in Africa because it's just such a huge place.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing I was curious in general was kind of because you did your bachelor's and master's in Nigeria.
Yes.
What the texts, for example, that your father had and the things you would learn at university, is that I was really curious, like whether that's more or less the same things that we're taught in Europe and the Western world, whether that's, the same kind of studies, or whether it's like a completely different kind of research that, we're not even familiar with in Europe or the US.
Yeah, I mean, totally. The text that I get is like, it's all about like a Western name, and most times like we struggle to pronounce these names. Like, so most of the texts that we have earlier on are Western based, developed and written by a Western researcher. For me, like psychology development in Nigeria, kind of, I would say slow, because we don't have much to go on. It's barely like 55 years old now in Nigeria. And some other African countries is way younger, like the practice of psychology. So for me, I did my BSc 2004, and this is when very few people want to aspire to be a psychologist. So we barely have students register or seek admission for psychology. So most of the time, people just like go for some of the most popular ones, then economics, medicine, and some other courses, science courses like this. And psychology is not a thing that people will just go for because we don't know much about it. For me, I was just privileged to have to read texts like this, psychological texts. So, yeah, so still growing, very few departments. But right now, I think we have pretty much like close to like maybe 40 departments. I can't tell often, but I think it should be like close to 40 departments of psychology in Nigeria right now. And that's pretty much like a lot. When it started, it's like we have like 10, just 5, 10, like just keeps going like that. So there's not much to go with then. And a lot of people that have the practice psychology right now really develop in the 80s, and they are doing their thing. Yeah.
Wait, so if psychology is not super popular and very few people do it, how did both your uncle and your father end up doing it? Yeah, it seems like they must have been like very early in the game in Nigeria.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how they get into it actually, because we have very few departments of psychology in Nigeria at that time. Yes. So I don't know how, but okay. I think that there's a story that my uncle did psychology, then told my dad about how interesting this course is, and I think my dad fell for that and like, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to do psychology. So, well, funny enough, my dad kind of, I think, went for that because he got his PhD. Then my uncle didn't have his PhD in psychology. Then the psychology is pretty much not popular because I know for a fact that if there is admission, psychology students are way like lower students than the other departments. So they tried every kind of means to get more students for psychology, but the other ones are like they can have like people just fall over each other to get admission into other disciplines, but psychology, so that was not the case. Yeah.
I mean, so you said you did your bachelor's in 2004.
I got admission in 2004. I think I finished 2018 thereabout. Yeah, so I did my master's. I started master's in 2011, then finished 2014. In Nigeria, and these are some of the problems that the irregularity of the academic years is so much. Sometimes you have strikes, and sometimes sometimes there are just a bunch of issues that just delayed you, and so these are like, so sometimes you start and you didn't finish on time. Like you have to spend some extra years to be able to finish the program.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm curious, like why did you want to do a PhD, and why go to? I mean, you're in France now, so kind of what was the decision to do a PhD, and then specifically, how did you end up in the lab that you're in now? I mean, was it always a decision to go abroad, or was it kind of random, or yeah?
So I think my journey to France, I also started at my home university, because I work with a university in Nigeria, and so there is this scheme that will allow academic staff to do program, maybe master's or PhD in France. So this scheme is in partnership with Campus France. So I was like, I think I need to kind of move out of Nigeria, then learn more about psychology in a more, say, advanced country. So it would be a great opportunity for me. So I key into that. Did some French language courses. I mean, elementary. So just to make sure like I can get the admission. Yeah. So one of my colleagues who went through this process, she's already in France, and she kind of linked me up with my current supervisor, IJzerman. Like, I'm not sure I pronounced that very well. Like, it's kind of complicated. Like, he's a Dutch researcher, so I'm not good with the Dutch pronunciation words like that. So, yeah, I hope he's not offended that I kind of messed up the pronunciation of his name. So I get connected with him. We discuss, and it was super, very open, and asked me if I want to come, then if I want to do study related to replication. And that was the first time I heard about replication. I was like, I couldn't tell, like, I don't know what replication is. I tried to dig literature, like, what is replication? Like, this is... so you can imagine. It was not like, okay, yeah, you can try to think about it. I said, okay, I'm going to think about it, and then I will get back to him. I think maybe the second or the third day, I just kind of sent him email. I was like, I think I'll be interested in this. Okay, so we had another Zoom call, and he was like, yeah. I said, yeah, I'm interested in running a replication study. And he was like, oh, that's very fast. It's kind of a big turnaround. Like, yes, I need the admission. I need to just process this and get to France and start working on the PhD. So I got the admission. Then I moved to France, and so the whole journey started about replication, getting involved in African psychology, because this was not my initial plan. I was thinking I would just run my own studies, something close to, by the way, I did forensic and correctional psychology at master's level. So I'm thinking something along the line of criminal behavior, maybe something correctional, like something related to that. Then when I got to France, then the whole journey of like replication, big team science, open science, how African can become involved in this. They're like, yeah, so this is my new found vision. Yeah.
But it seems you've really embraced that, right? I mean, it seems like you're really trying. I mean, from what I can tell, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least I saw there's a ManyLabs Africa project where you're the contact person for. And yeah, okay, so it's really interesting because, like when I just saw your CV, I thought like, oh, okay, maybe this was your plan from the beginning. But
yes. So that wasn't my plan from the beginning. So I think all this started like 2 years plus. Like, so I came to France in February 2020. Then I just kind of embraced this because what else will I have to do? And so I just have to embrace it. Then I started sit down, study, look at the literature, look at the trend, and interestingly, I would say probably I fell in love with that. I say like, yeah, I think there is something big here that I can learn, and I can also impact people back home and tell them about this new movement about making research more credible, more transparent, and there are tools you can use, and some of these tools are open source. It's free, at no cost. You can get to do more research, collaborate with people and other stuff. So I just kind of embrace it and say, okay, good, I have to run with this. And then I started the whole issue of the ManyLabs Africa initiative. So the issue, the initiative is kind of like ambitious, I would say, because nobody have discussed this with like, yeah, this is what I want. They're like, are you sure you can do this within the span of 3 years? And yeah, I'll give it a try and see what happens. So right now it looks like this is what I've been planning for all this while, but this started like 2 years. 2 years and yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe can we talk a bit more about the ManyLabs Africa project? I mean, I don't know how far it is and how much you can tell about it, but kind of what's the... I mean, so from what I understand, ManyLabs is this effort to have, well, many different labs collaborating to replicate certain papers that they deem important to replicate. And yeah, kind of what is ManyLabs Africa, and yeah, maybe just what is it? Yeah.
So when I arrived in France, so there's this document my supervisor showed me, and it was like, there's this document, maybe you want to read about the ManyLabs study. So that was my first introduction to it. There's this author, Richard Klein. Like he did like the ManyLabs study. I think probably actually the first one that I knew about. Like it tested effects. Then and I think he used some of the population, used some kind of sample, got sample from Africa, like some few countries. I can't remember specifically. I think maybe Nigeria is part of the country. Yeah. So and then I see that like we have series, we have the ManyLabs 2, then 3. I think we have up to like ManyLabs 5 right now. Then the ManyLabs Africa. So I was inspired by that. But the main issue is that some of the tools and the practices that ManyLabs is projecting, like the use of the open science framework is not popular in Nigeria, for example, then with time I start looking at this in other African countries, God, that this is not very popular, because then the question is, how do we allow people to use this platform? Because if you can use it, it's a little bit difficult for you to collaborate with researchers out there, because they're already using the open science framework. Some of them write their scripts in our language. So the first thing we should do is to find a way to develop the research capacity of African researchers that want to participate in the ManyLabs African study. Again, we turn to another initiative, the Collaborative Replication Education Project. I usually call this CREP or CREEP. So I kind of struggle with the acronym sometimes, but I'm very comfortable when I say CREP. So this allows you to run a replication study using some of these open science tools. You just follow these practices, then you're able to replicate a study. So I adopted that initiative then, but this time we're going to run a study in Africa. So we call that the CREP Project Africa. So for this CREP Project Africa, I created not me exactly, but I did it in conjunction with Jordan Wagi, the executive director of CREP. But she did bunch of the recording, but we discussed about creating a training video. So we have a series of 4 training videos. Then over time, we asked African researchers, they able to provide a translation. So we subtitles this video in about 6 African languages. I think we have we have Portuguese, we have Chichewa, Swahili, Yoruba, Igbo, so I think that there's another one I can't remember right now. So this allow with this kind of video, we can tell, okay, if you have the opportunity to look at this video, you can learn more about the CREP and some of this stuff about open science, the open science framework, how we can do a replication study, how you can start, then you can complete this using the CREP platform. So that is the idea of the CREP project, and this is tied to the Rotzman and Young replication. So again, we selected a study. So this study, we believe this study is something relevant that might be of interest to African researchers. We actually asked them, do you think this study is now? And some of them yeah, the study is cool. They can run this kind of study in Africa, in their country. And okay, cool. Then we worked on that. Then we submitted a registered report to HAMS, a journal, and we are working on that right now. And
that's the one where the preprint of that is public, right?
Yeah. Yes. So a preprint of that is public, and I think most of my work I do preprints, so that majorly so that African researcher can have access to it, because most of the journals that they are paid word, and a lot of African researchers don't even get to see. I would say. New kind of publication. We mostly just get some of them when it's it's not probably a contemporary issue that people discuss. And so with a preprint, people can see, they can download these, and they can they know the trends of discussion, and they know the trend, the discussion, ongoing discussion. And so for me, a preprint is very important to share what I do with African researchers. Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that you had the I think that's also still a preprint. What was the name? I'm blanking out right now.
The synergy article?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, by the way, for anyone new to the podcast, I'll put links and references for anything we discuss in the description. So the synergy preprint, exactly. What I found interesting there is that how you kind of say basically all the stuff that's going on in the replication crisis is such a negative word. So you use what term do you use again? Reproducibility revolution or something like that?
Yes. The credibility revolution.
The credibility revolution, yes. So basically how lots of the tools that were developed there are actually especially beneficial for people in Africa, where, for example, financial resources are just not as high. So can you maybe talk a little bit more about you already mentioned preprints, how that's a really useful thing, that people from countries with few resources can read the papers. Can you maybe talk a little bit about a few other examples of how this is really helping?
So the synergy between the credibility revolution and development in Africa, for me, this is an educational kind of article. So one is to tell people from the US, from the Europe, and other world regions that this is what is going on in Africa. And these are some of our shortcomings and our challenges when it comes to research, the funding, the need for capacity development. You need to develop people's capacity, research capacity, the lack of facilities, infrastructures, resources, funding, and other stuff. And so these are the challenges that African researchers go through on a daily basis, plus the workload and other stuff. So it's tough out there to try to be a researcher and keep up with the life, live a good life, and other stuff. At the other side of the credibility revolution, it's very interesting that the open science movement have allowed people to create tools to advance credibility. But the fact that these tools are open source, like you can access them for free, should be something that can solve the problem of lack of resources to get them from the African angle. So, for example, we've talked about the preprint. That means you can have access to literature, you can have access to open access journals, maybe the green open access journal, the gold open access journal. You can have access to data sets like open data. People have done something and you want to use some of these resources, or just to check and see are these resources where I can learn, that can educate me about how to go about some kind of research, or like a workflow where people have posted these stuff and these are free, and they are available. So for me, accessibility and able to share that, Africans can learn from that. For me, another big one that I think I'm mostly in is the collaboration, kind of networking, reach out to people, then share resources, then you can work on projects, research, studies, and you can get the visibility. People can see that you are doing something, you're contributing to knowledge that in a way, contrary to a situation where you're in Africa, you go through this yourself. Sometimes you spend your own from your pockets to be able to do research. But you can collect data from a different country, and the partner will collect the data, do the expenses, then you are part of that kind of study. So this is where I was going to for the African. As I said, you can tap into these resources and do research at a cheaper cost and other stuff. So in the piece, we try to highlight some of these aspects. Then we recommend, we made some recommendation about accessibility, like I said, how you can key into these, the kind of tools you can use, how this can be beneficial to you. At the same time, we made the recommendation to people from the rich universities or society that, this is what you can do to support African researchers. We need funds. We need tools. You can make some of these things open to us more, and we'll be able to participate in some of your research.
Yeah. And I think it's, you also mentioned in that piece that, Sci-Hub is a website that is where you can download papers for free. But it's very important to highlight that this is illegal and you should definitely not use it.
Yeah.
But, so you should definitely not use this website where you can get papers for free.
So, so I don't even want to talk about that, but yes. So for sure, the site up is going to serve Africans more because you'll be able to at least get some literature that you can. There's no way you can afford the subscription. Even for some universities in Nigeria, for example, there's a lot of, they pay a lot, to subscribe, and there is little they can do little because of the funds. So if you can have like a site like the site up like that, it allows you to have access to more text, and then you can follow the research discussions. But I'm not like I know, like you said, you don't want to recommend
no, not recommending that people use this. Definitely not.
Not recommending this,
yeah. I mean, I guess maybe whilst we're talking about funds, so the one thing that's kind of unusual and that I didn't expect. I mean, so I read first your article, Psychology Should Generalize, from Not Just True Africa, and I guess we can talk a bit about that later.
Yeah.
And then I kind of just checked out, like, I think someone tweeted about the article or something and included you or something like that. And then, yeah, I mean, this was around the time that you had the problem with the funding. So maybe can you, just kind of explain what the situation was there and how, I mean, you already mentioned how you basically, from Nigeria applied to get a place in France and then arrived there, and maybe what you did mention is the financial situation of that. So can you maybe tell that story?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So I think you mentioned at a point like it's unusual, like to have this kind of situation.
Yeah, at least for people that I know. Exactly.
Well, so I can tell you that from my understanding, right? I think I'm kind of finding more cases like mine, because after my situation, I spoke with a couple of colleagues from Nigeria, and some of them like, they like, this kind of stuff looks like mine. I was promised that I'm going to get something, that I should go. Don't worry, we'll process your funding. And a year plus right now, they don't receive anything. So I was like, okay, are you sure? Like, what university? Like, my university, and there are different stories like that. So I don't know what's going on back there. I don't know what people do these days, and I think a number of people are not getting their funding, and this is not it's not fun at all. It's not, because in my own case, I committed some few amounts. I have to spend my personal savings, to able to survive the first few months when I got to France, and so this was going on. Then my supervisors they start getting I feel they are even kind of more worried about the situation for me, and so aside from the main supervisor, IJzerman, I work with my other supervisor, after the supervisors actually, Patrick Fosha. He's one of those people that are leading a big team science, and is currently in Buzora Center in Kenya, Africa. I met him, a super great person, a friend, and he's a mentor, for what I do right now. Then Dana Basnight Brown is also in Kenya with I think private investor in Kenya. So I think this theory were like, I think you need the funding. What do? We exhausted all other options, and we tried to contact our Campus France with this, contact my home university. Do we have funds?
I mean, sorry, just to clarify,
Yes.
I mean, I'm not sure how explicitly we mentioned this. You were given a scholarship, is that correct? Or at least some sort of funding to do your PhD, and then when you arrived in France, you never got any of the money?
Yes, I was given a scholarship, and I have a document to this effect. Like here, you get money when you get to France, but for in the meantime, you have to sustain yourself. Then I committed some amount, for the first few months, and so my thinking was that, as I was promised, that before a few months we'll get everything sorted out. Then you start getting your pay. So that didn't happen. The only money I got was the one that I committed to when I was leaving Nigeria. So, and I kept asking, what is going on? Did you guys apply at all? Like, we applied, and I think this was at the period when the COVID and the pandemic, period. And you can imagine the finances of some of these governments, and maybe things were not running as normally. So that was for me an excuse, like maybe after the COVID stuff, they can resolve these and I can start getting, my dues, my grant. Yeah. So it's good to clarify that. I was promised to get these, and they made the application, but I didn't get the fund, and yeah.
Yeah, and then sorry, I mean, I interrupted you when you were talking.
Yeah. So I was talking like before the crowdfunding thing, we tried a lot of other options, and like we just ran out of options, and I think I was doing a meeting, and so I was like, maybe we want to try crowdfunding. I was like, yeah, I think we want to try, because I really want to focus on what I'm doing right now, and so we tried that, and yeah. A lot of researchers from the psychology community donated, through the Patreon and the GoFundMe. Right now, I say I kind of more relaxed and focused on the project, and so I want to use this opportunity to thank them for their support and donation. So yeah, right now I think I'm in a good place, to focus on the project.
Okay, that's good. I was wondering, like. Yeah, I mean, like some of the questions I had one of them was just like, how are you doing right now? Like financially, I mean, just financially, is that still a problem, or do you have enough to get through it? And then also, yeah, the second question is like, how did that affect you? Because I don't know, it sounds like if you go to a foreign country with a foreign language to do work, and then suddenly you have no money and you're not even allowed to work because of your visa. Yeah. It sounds rough.
I mean, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. Like, yeah, I don't know how to express that. Like, I just try to live. I would say maybe day by day, but I pretty much checking my finances, like every kind of expenses that I check my finance. Like, please, you can't. You have to like manage this, and so I was living on a very extremely low budget, and so just to make sure I get through every day, then looking forward, maybe I will get the grant will come, and then I will be able to relax. But I was really struggling financially, but I just have to keep going, so yeah.
Is there any plans on getting the original fund? Or is that out of the question completely?
I think that is out of the question completely. I've given up. I've given up on that. I've given up on that. Like it just doesn't worth the stress to just go back and forth on that. Yeah. So okay. So I whatever they want to do, let them figure it out. Like right now, I just have to focus on, and I think. A lot of people, like I said, from the psychology community really, I mean, I was not expecting there's so much support like that. So, I was just like, wow, like this was what I was thinking I would just get something at least to, I can manage with for another few months, then start to figure out where do I get, and it was pretty much close to, maybe I was able to get something for like 70%, 80% of what the target, and also right now I can relax more, like I said, and focus on.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, like how much money people gave. I also was kind of surprised because I saw it after basically most of that had happened, right? Yeah, when I heard about it, I was also surprised that it would actually work. So I didn't think. I mean, like, sure, you'd have like some people who would give something, right? But it seems like, yeah, you pretty much managed to get. At least large portions of what you were supposed to be given by the fund, you were given by researchers who just individually paid in some money here and there.
Yeah, the truth is like I was surprised too. Like, I was not expecting so much support like at that level. Like, wow, yeah. So this is like kind of a call to duty for me. Like, maybe there is something that I'm doing that a lot of people wants to see this progress, and they are ready to commit their money to make sure that I get through it. And so that means I have to like double down again, make sure like I kind of push this further. So yeah. Like,
It's interesting. I was wondering that whether, I mean, I wasn't sure whether I was going to ask this question, but I was wondering like whether this puts a bit more pressure on you, because usually you get funding from like an anonymous, big kind of government grant, and I mean, of course, you want to do a good job, but like it's
yes,
just money that exists. Whereas now it's like individual people who gave to you. Some of them actually, well, at least one of them was actually on the podcast.
okay.
I went through the list. Um, but yeah, I was just wondering, like, do you feel like extra pressure through that, or is it just appreciation, or yeah?
Yeah, I will not say extra pressure like to do this, but I think maybe I would say I kind of appreciate more why I should push this. I should push the idea of improving African participation in global research, especially for psychological science. So not a pressure too much, but I really appreciate like how individuals are committed to my vision, not necessarily the pressure, but I don't want to disappoint them actually. So I just still have to put in more work, But I think well, I appreciate this the support. It's really cool to see people turning up like that. Yeah, I mean, I looked at the names too, like, I said, oh, really? So these are interesting individuals, like as scholars that I respect a lot, and I'm like, wow, you get, wow, this is good, So I see like what I'm encouraged, I'm encouraged with this, and yeah.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, shall we get back to talking a bit more about the actual? I mean, I guess in some ways this is maybe related. As I said, like we were already talking about limited funds and that kind of stuff, and how that can be a problem. But maybe more to the slightly like, I don't know exactly what I'd call this. This is a great transition. Anyway, I want to talk about your article, Psychology Generalized from Not Just to Africa.
Yeah.
Because that was the initial way of how I kind of found out about you and your work.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe can you just to get the kind of the ball rolling, briefly summarize? I mean, it's a commentary; it's not a super long piece, but like kind of what the main message there is, and then we can discuss the details a bit more.
Yeah, I can summarize a little bit, but so I just want to put something really quick, and maybe not the summary, but so it's interesting that this specific commentary is getting, like I would say, is getting the attention, and so the idea of the commentary, like I think what happened when Jane Richla, the chief editor of Nature Review Psychology. So I think we invited her to our lab, the co-regulation lab in France, yeah. And so I think she gave a talk about the Nature Review Psychology, what it's all about and what they do. And we had the opportunity to have like a kind of a small group discussion with her. And so I told her about my initiative. And she was so interested, like, yeah, this is kind of a blind spot for people in Europe, or yeah, and she would like, if I want to write a comment, she's going to really welcome that. Like, say, yeah, okay, I think I can do that. So let's see what happens. So this is where this particular piece came from, just to an idea for a commentary and to share the single fact that a lot of effects most of what we do is from the US, majorly, from the US to other part of the world, the other world region, and we want to replicate effects found in the US, and for me, my own initiative is all about, I think we should start looking at effects or some claims from other regions, and for me, Africa, and see maybe we have something there that people from the US can learn from, they can use to improve their own theories and stuff like that. Then I kind of put together the commentary. So where to start from is, in terms of giving a summary, is that Right now, Africa is about 17% world population right now. And guess what? By 2050, Africa will probably be the largest, will have the largest population. It's going to be crazy. Maybe close to around, I don't know the percentage right now, but it's pretty going to be the largest population. And if that is going to be, then we need to pay attention to what psychology is in this population that is going to dominate the population of the world. And then that means you have to pay attention to what's the thinking, the thought process of an African man, how African man, his own view, how does this develop into theories for them? How do they manage social issues? And we can learn from this and see, maybe we can apply this in any part of the world. I think it's very important that world population should be included in research, So then I looked at the trend in what we call the big team science. This when you come together and people study, then they kind of network at people from different part of the world and conduct a study. Some study can be very, very large, like the sampling can be that big, sometimes like 15,000 and like that. And so, but most of the effects that people do use are like almost all in the situation that I cited. We're unable to cite those stuff, but I look like the psychological science accelerator, even the ManyLabs studies that I got inspiration for the ManyLabs Africa study. Almost in all these cases are effects from the US, maybe some few ones from the Europe. That might not really serve us too well. So if you want psychology to truly be like to generalize what people do, to psychology to represent the whole idea of the human population. So like I said, then it makes more sense for psychologists to start looking at what Africa do and how they go about their own stuffs, the theories from Africa. Then for us to do that, we have to understand African psychology. We have to know their own research focus. What is interesting for Africa to what are they interested in? What are those things that are relevant to them? As a society. Even at the different country level, different countries. We have like 54 countries in Africa, and I can tell you there are different cultures and different way people address issues. But of course, we have similarities, and that is, and most of the times I concentrate on these similarities where we have the common grounds and see, okay, if you have a common grounds on this particular research area, I can say yes. So that means this research will be relevant to all these different cultures in Africa. So we want to understand that. And from my understanding right now, most of the issues in Africa are kind of practical problems to solve issues that like corruption, political instability, poverty, disease-related kind of problems like that. So they want to look at this, for Africa, not specifically like theoretical based kind of study. Like they want applied studies that help them to solve these problems. So for us in Africa, this is something that, and I think some areas, some discipline in Africa, like public health, are doing even far better than psychology because they are dealing with some of these issues. And I think their contribution globally is pretty okay, because these are issues that they focus on, and these are issues that even some African government are going to invest their funds into, because it concerns solving some of these problems. The other aspect that I think we need to understand about Africa is the reality of funds, lack of infrastructure, and the environment research are do their own stuff. So if we're able to understand that, then we know where to come in, what is going to be important for them to be able to to produce more, and sometimes they need access to literatures and people from the Europe and the US need to, even if it's a small grant, to assist, put in resources for them, allow them to, to share from your own resources to able to do research, it's stuff out there. And so if we understand that you can provide I'll give an example, the SPSP, Society for Personality and Social Psychology. I did this hackathon where I invited African researchers to participate, and it was linked to training them. Then I got the grant of about $1,500. So then with this grant, we were able to provide $100 internet subscription grants for 15, attendees. And plus they got a 1 year membership, subscription. And for a fact, I can tell you, a number of them reached out to me after the expiration of the subscription. Are we going to get another, are they going to renew this subscription? I'm not sure that is going to happen. And that means they learn a lot of stuff from there, just being part of that society. And if we can reach out to African researchers like these, even small grants is going to go a long way for them to, participate in some of these stuff. Yeah. So I think some other things that we can think about is about we can organize conferences, events that Africans can relate to. I have this personal experience. I attended a conference and they were talking about inclusion, and some of what they talk about inclusion are kind of based on sexual orientation, racial orientation, kind of inclusion, kind of stuff. And I was like, because for my own, I'm thinking about Africa, kind of yeah, these are very interesting way to include people in research, gender based, kind of inclusion. You want to have more women doing research and like that. So but for us in Africa, I think we even want to be part of the discussion in the first place, So I follow the discussion, but I feel like this is not what I'm thinking about when I think about inclusion. So when an African man think about inclusion, he's thinking about how do I get to work with you as an African person? How do I get to my voice? My voice is heard when we are making discussion. So for scientific societies like this in Europe and in the US, we have to think about some of these topics or areas where Africans can key into and able to make contribution, because we cannot make contribution to some of the issues being discussed in some of these conferences. So the final aspect, I've just tried to round this off. The final aspect of this is the replication I've said, replicating the African effect discovered in Africa. Yeah. So I think that's a long kind of summary, but so I get excited when I discuss this issue, so I get carried away a lot, and because I know that there's so many stuff to talk about. Guess what? It's a summary actually. I didn't go into details of of my thoughts about or things I think we can do to make stuff better. Yeah, it's a long one.
Yeah, no problem. No, I mean, what I really liked about that part is that it really shifted, the article kind of shifted just my perspective on this a bit. And it relates also to what you mentioned towards the end with what you would really like is to have to be part of the discussion, to have your voice heard in these things, because it seems to me that, and then this is definitely the way I thought about it before, it was just this viewing kind of African, I mean, I didn't think about this too much, which is maybe part of the problem, but viewing it more as oh, great, now we can test our theories with people who have, different backgrounds and all these kind of things, which is, I mean, that's important. And yes. That's, it's something I wish it was easier to do also. But yeah, kind of the reverse, which also the title of the commentary refers to, namely that Africa, people in Africa have more to contribute than just we can collect data in different populations, but you can actually
for sure
contribute different theories and
for sure.
I'd never really thought about it that much. until I kind of read that commentary. But okay, then a brief question, like why? So you mentioned the ManyLabs Africa and the first replication you're doing, but you're replicating a study from I'm assuming US or Europe or something like that. Why not use replicate a paper from an African country or African researchers?
Yeah, so I think I need to clarify that. So I have what I call the ManyLabs Africa project. So the ManyLabs Africa project involves two studies. The first one is the CREP Project Africa. So the CREP project essentially is to allow Africans to do a replication and get trained, get the idea, the experience of running a replication study using the CREP platform. So for that study, that is we selected the Rothman and Young 2019 study about transgression and judgment and harm and purity transgression judgment. The process of selecting the study was, I would say, robust to some extent, because at a point we asked the African researcher, we have 3 studies, we want to use one of these. We have 3 articles, like they are kind of bundled studies like that. We have study 1, 2, 3, but we asked the African researcher, we want to work with these studies. What do you think? Do you think it's feasible? Is relevant? Can we adapt the measures? And we got response we can adapt these. So out of the last 3, the top 3 for us, we ended up with the Rothman and Young one. So we had input from African researchers, but like you said, this is a study done in the US. And for the second part of the study, what we call the ManyLabs Africa study, the idea is to get 3 effects originally discovered in Africa. That means conceptualized by an African, used African sample, self-developed, like the measure is developed in Africa, those kind of stuff. So it's 2 different studies. So the second one is the main one where we push the idea of replicating effects from Africa, in North American. Essentially, maybe we are talking about the US, Canada, because we have collaborators there right now from the US and Canada interested in working on this, the ManyLabs Africa study, and in Europe. So, yeah.
Okay, so you are basically doing that, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I clarify this the 2 different studies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we only talked about the first study. Can you already say which papers you're trying to replicate, or is that not decided yet, or secret?
Yes. So again, for us to select the study for the ManyLabs Africa study, we went through another stages of study selection. We went back to African research. We want to select study for this. What research area is going to be of interest and relevant to African researchers? We got response, and bunch of different people went to different areas. But again, if you looked at this area, they are basically kind of applied areas, of psychology, kind of research areas. Then we narrowed down. Then we searched the literature. Now we search African journals, studies that are done in Africa, and like that. Then, of course, we set some criteria. So I want to make sure that whatever study we want to use is feasible, is reproducible. So, and we had the top 5 right now. And right now we are working on study assessments. The study involves all collaborators from the US, from Europe, from Africa. They can assess, for example, maybe we can adapt the measures, for this top 5. Then out of this top 5 study, we're going to pick the last 3. We already, if you can check, we've created an OSF page for this, and we shared, we have links and topics for these top 5 studies, but we don't have the final 3 yet, so we still have to work on that. Yeah, so
I'll put that in the description.
Yes,
then too.
Yeah, you can have the link to the ManyLabs Africa study OSF page. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, kind of my last kind of topic I'd like to talk about is, yeah, I mean, basically how we can, as people in Western universities doing research, how we can test our theories in more diverse samples, for example, from Africa. Because, I mean, it's something that I'd like to do. I'd like to have my participants come from all over the place and also be representatives of those places. Yeah, how can I, for example, test my theories in different populations? Because right now it just seems so much more convenient for me to test, especially people from Europe, because I'm in Europe. And it seems like a huge amount of effort for me, or I wouldn't even know where to start, basically, if I wanted to, for example, test my theories with people from Nigeria. I'd assume I'd have to contact someone in Nigeria and start a collaboration. But yeah, I'm curious, like whether like, yeah, how can I kind of, how can we do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Researchers in Africa too ask questions like this. How do I connect people from other part of the world? Because I want to test a theory and say, for me, there are so many initiatives like the Psychological Science Accelerator, where we have a network of researchers across the globe. Maybe you can use that kind of platform. But for me, I'm not sure that is enough, because I think for a start, you need to involve, if you want to do research in Nigeria, you need to involve a local researcher there, from the start, from the conceptualization of that project, so that they can have these inputs and you're able to avoid any kind of, like a mistake or, or making corrections here and there. So for me, the best way is to try to connect with somebody, a local researcher. You can use the PSA or the Psychology Science or any other platform. You can contact people individually and talk to them. I want to do something like this. How do I go about it? Can we discuss something? I have this idea and let's talk about it. And when you talk about this with them, you have to be super clear about how they come into this project. Do you want them to collect data for you? Do you want them to talk about the methods? If you can be on the same page with them, it makes it easier, for them to know how they can, their input, how they can come into the project. And it allows you, to be able to explore, some of these practices that are out there that maybe you don't know, or you're not familiar with, but that can benefit your own study. So if you can do that, and then you talk about, in the first place, the study the theory you want to test, are people going to be interested in that, and you can actually just solve, that kind of issue by talking to somebody from that country. Because sometimes what's most collaboration kind of study, what they do is to, figure out everything and say, we need somebody in Africa to collect data. And some of them will yeah, okay, we can collect data for you. But they're not going to feel like part of the study, because they just feel like, yeah, they're just collecting data and that's it. Well, so sometimes you looked at the measures or the instrument and yeah, this instrument doesn't really work here because this is not something that we are. So there's a need for cultural adaptation of measures. Sometimes you can't even assess some kind of population, especially the non-English speaking populations. In that kind of situation, it doesn't even work at all. So that means there's a need for translation of the measures, because most of the measures are designed, they are written in English. So these are issues that you need to make sure that you trashed out, make sure everything is, then you can do this. So it's a lot of work actually, but it's going to save, it's going to save you a lot of headaches along the line, then allow you to have kind of more, maybe I would say credible, kind of study, because you're able to cover a lot of stuff. Then again, there are other things you might want to know about. Do they have the facilities to carry out the study that you're talking about? And it is not even until now that sometimes when you say online study, most times researchers in Africa just have to set up a designated room where they have a system and they have internet, then invite participants to come and take the test. using a particular computer. But for some people don't even have the internet to be able to take the test online, and or the internet is unstable, or they don't have a phone, so these are things that you have to consider. And the best way to know about this is to talk to a local researcher there. I want to do this. How do you go about it? Then you guys discuss, the workflow, the methods, and what area is relevant or interest. Then, like that, I think most studies would even be better off, I'm pretty better off, because you'll have covered, like, adapt it, to the culture. Then you can even start comparing, like, okay, the culture is different, and you can see, like, maybe there are constraints to the generality of that theory. You can able to articulate that, better, so, yeah.
Yeah. I guess you still have to adapt it to the specific context you're in. I mean,
yeah.
I guess for some studies, I'm thinking about my things. I think the things I do might be a bit simpler, but yeah, but even there, you'd have to adapt certain things. And but yeah, for some studies, I guess this is going to be a huge problem.
Some
certain concepts they use and describe or whatever are so, like, ingrained in the culture that they might not even make sense to people in other cultures.
Exactly. So yeah, so these are. I'm facing the same issue with the with the CRE projects, Africa, and the ManyLabs. Like, there are some concepts that people are not familiar with. It doesn't even make sense to them, so you have to adapt it. For me, no matter how, like, maybe the difference, but in a way, if people can identify, or they're familiar with the terminology or something, it makes it more, like, it makes it more reliable, like for people, like, the measures becomes better, in that context. Guess what? Even for the ManyLabs Africa, like, what I'm seeing right now is that even within Europe, like, there's kind of like differences in how people, the adaptation we might need some kind of adaptation within Europe, and sometimes this speaks to, like, the ethical issues. Some country might not be able to run some study, and some European country might not be able to run, and the same study is just fine for another European country. And so these are stuff that you need to clear, and it allows everybody to feel included in the study, yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, I guess, as we mentioned earlier, there's little point in just Westerners paying African people to collect data for them. That's not exactly the way forward.
Yeah. That is not exactly the way.
I mean, it's probably better than completely ignoring them. But it's probably not ideal either.
Yeah, definitely, it's better than ignoring them. But what we'll probably be doing is that we are again kind of, I will not say exploiting,
Yeah.
So just to use the sample to better the maybe I can use Western theories right now, to better theories in the US or Europe, and then this theory might not be very, very might not be useful, in the African setting. It's just like to explain a US or some kind of European kind of theory, So I think we have to do better. What I mean by we, I mean Europeans and the US researchers have to do better by engaging African researchers, supporting them, to be able to, to contribute, beyond data collection and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I guess those were all my questions. The only question I kind of have remaining is in your Patreon account, you mentioned you're away from the pounded yam with Egusi soup and bushmeat that you love. I was just curious, what's so special about that? Sounds good, but I don't exactly know what it is.
So the pounded yam, that's I'm a Yoruba man, and so this is a very popular delicacy, and we have, like, you can boil the yam, then you pound it, then it becomes sorry, but very nice. Then you have a soup, Egusi soup. Yeah, different kind of, but my own favorite is like with the Egusi soup and what we call the bushmeat, or like, I think you guys got like game or something.
Okay. So bushmeat means like hunted.
Yes.
Meat
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So
or like not like domesticated animals, but
no,
wild
exactly.
animals. Or,
Yeah. So
okay. And egusi, what is
yeah,
egusi soup?
Egusi is melon, like the melon seed. The seed, like yeah. So we can grind it and mix with some other, stuffs, and to make soup. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very maybe sometime when you get to Nigeria, or maybe if I invite you to Nigeria, then you can you can try it. Yeah, super nice.
Yeah. Okay, or maybe I don't think I'll find a Nigerian restaurant in Heidelberg, but who knows? Maybe.
No, yeah, it's possible.
I mean, Heidelberg isn't super big. That's what.
Yeah, you know the history of Nigerians. Like we probably like almost every part of the world. Like our migration history. Like we probably, I think we pretty much have like Nigerians around. Maybe they have this kind of restaurant where you can get stuff like this.
Okay, well, I'll definitely also have to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm basically done with my question and everything. If you have anything you want to add, we can add it. Otherwise, I'll just stop recording.
Yeah. So
you don't have to.
I mean, for me, this is a journey, to improve the position of African researcher, and for me, it's more or less like an awareness, of what is out there in Africa, how we can become part of the global, psychological science, and so it's still like a long journey, if I would say that. Like, so for me, something that started like a few years back probably might be like a lifetime kind of career stuff for me. So,
it's not a 5-year project. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm happy to share my thoughts, on a podcast. So I'm super grateful that I'm invited and to share thoughts and talk about this. I know a lot of people listening to this and and they can able to learn one or two things, and I'm happy to contribute in this manner. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.